Hello and good morning to everyone. Let us get started. On behalf of the entire Interactivity team, I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today. And the topic for this webinar, which is the first in the series for this year, is e-learning trends set to transform the online learning scene in 2019. And honestly, since this topic is about trends, I would personally love to hear, not just from me, of course, but from all of you as well, any examples of the trends we're going to see here today that you've experienced, or perhaps even a trend that you're seeing which may not necessarily be captured here. So would love to hear your comments, thoughts via the chat, and a couple of my colleagues from the Interactivity team are helping me monitor and organize the chat. So would be wonderful to hear from you, kind of keep it informal and flowing. With that, let's get started. By way of introduction, I am Janhavi Parture, and I am the Vice President of Product Strategy and Business Development here at Interactivity, and been with Interactivity and Harbinger for, wow, 12 plus years, and it's been an exciting time to see all the changes that our industry has gone through. So with that, just a few quick housekeeping things before we get on with our webinar. In case any of you are experiencing audio issues, you may want to try the suggested steps that are on your screen right now. And I hope everyone is able to hear me clearly. If not, please let me know anytime. Secondly, please use the chat as a means to communicate, share your thoughts, questions, ideas, whatever. And last but not least, I wanted to mention that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you post the webinar, soon after the webinar. So with that, let's get on with our session today, and we have and get into the first trend. And mind you, these trends are not in any particular order. So the first trend is artificial intelligence. And I am guessing this isn't coming as a surprise for many or most of you, because honestly, there's been so much hype about AI in almost every industry, and obviously learning industry is no exception. So in my opinion too, I feel AI has truly arrived. And to start us off, I just want to share, I just had to do this. I wanted to share this, one of my favorite videos on AI. It really makes you wonder, or made me wonder at least, about the potential of AI and what the future could hold for not just learning, but mankind. So I don't know if you've heard of IBM Debater. It's this platform, bot, whatever you want to call it. It is programmed to be able to hold actual debates, real debates with a human being or another machine. And it can actually make understand the context, the topic, and make relevant arguments, counter arguments, and so on. So I will turn it on. I am not sure if the audio is very clear. And in this case, they are using the IBM Debater is actually. And the IBM Debater was up against Mr. Natarajan, and subject was the subject given was should preschools have subsidies and funding, and both Mr. Natarajan and Project Debater were given 15 minutes to prepare. And after that, this is a little clip of what the debater is saying as part of the debate. So, I mean, it goes on to show more of her responses and arguments. Not just that, there's parts where the debater is actually able to make light jokes based on what the opponent has said, or even counter argue some of the points. So really, this blew me away, because honestly, I mean, we're talking learning and what could be the potential. This is I think the future has arrived, so to speak. So with that, in the learning space now, tying it to our learning space, AI obviously holds a lot of promise in this year and beyond, I feel. And especially since we are making this shift, the new next generation learning platforms are making a shift toward offering personalized learning experiences. Many of these AI technologies will be put to use. And just for clarification, speaking of these technologies, AI is a broad term and pretty much encompasses one or all of these technologies mentioned here: machine learning, analytics, natural language processing or NLP, chatbots, and close cousin Internet of Things. So each of these, honestly, are a vast area of study in and of themselves, and are often used in conjunction with each other. So for instance, analytics is basically the ability to provide actionable insights by studying large amounts of data. In the learning context, it can be used to understand or even uncover some learning insights, such as learner interest, proficiency, learning styles, and so on. And then based on that, you could build on top of that to create some customized learning paths, which is where machine learning comes in. And machine learning is all about smart algorithms that take the analytics, maybe learner behaviors, outcomes, and put it all in perspective, and are able to actually adjust the learning experiences for the learner. So again, great potential. So for instance, imagine a recommendation engine that could suggest learning content or courses based on the proficiency profile, even peer evaluations of some of the courses out there. So say there was a course rated poorly by, say, 50% of the peers. The system should be able to automatically dial down perhaps something like the importance score, even though the course may be relevant to the area of study. So, again, a lot of potential with machine learning. Moving on to chatbots. I mean, we're already seeing them in use, whether if you go to a travel website, there's probably a bot waiting there to answer your questions. It's used for customer support, even is getting used for first-tier diagnostics and healthcare. So again, great potential. And I think without realizing, we are using it in our day-to-day lives too, like Apple Siri, Amazon's Alexa, Cortana, and so on. And all of these and more can be actually programmed to even front-end our e-learning courses. So for instance, imagine a financial planning coach that could, based on your questions, on the questions answered, your preferences and profile, might be able to recommend investment strategies. Not that much of a far-fetched idea, I would think. And then moving on to natural language processing, another subfield of AI, basically allows computers to understand the natural language, the spoken or written language, and whether it's Alexa or an interview bot, or say an automatic test grader application that grades not only multiple choice questions, but also essay type of questions. All of these actually use NLP behind the scenes. And so as you can see quickly, all these technologies are independent, and yet they all come together and intersect in so many ways, depending on what we want to achieve. I do want to make a passing reference to IoT, Internet of Things. Although we are seeing some aspects of it, IoT in training, I don't think is yet in its prime, but it is definitely something to keep an eye out on. IoT is essentially the intersection of people, devices, and technology. And, I personally feel with the confluence of AI technologies and IoT sensors and devices, there really is some great, amazing potential waiting to be unleashed. So, whether it's downloading data from teachers, teachers in their classrooms downloading data from sensors from far off places to give a real world experience, or using sensors to sort of bridge the gap for students with special learning needs. So a lot of potential in the learning space with the confluence of these two. So just quickly, here are a couple of examples of AI in learning. This example actually is, so Scholastic and IBM IBM Watson have collaborated, and the cognitive library of IBM Watson is allowing teachers to understand the learning progression of students and create recommended learning paths and learning according to their abilities and requirements. So just thought this was a very relevant example. And here's an example or a video of a platform called Quillions. It's an AI-powered platform for question generation, as simple as that. So the fundamental idea is, learning developers, instructional designers are constantly finding, having to go through so much text and textual content to produce relevant questions. What if that was automated for you? And then you had, of course, at the same time, flexibility to edit and modify those questions. That's essentially what Quillions is. So I'll play the video and kind of pause it at a couple spots here. And then, so as you can see, it's, you can bring in any textual content into Quillions. And what it does is essentially, number one, gives you, and I'll take it forward there, gives you the ability, it also pulls out keywords, which you can edit or add to, add, delete, or edit.
Hey Janavi, this is Poonam here. We are not able to hear the audio.
Oh, hey, thank you. Thanks. So the video audio is not feeding into the microphone. Sorry about that. I will explain what it is. Maybe I'll turn off the audio and just explain what's happening here. So once the content, I think you saw that a piece of textual content was pulled into Quillions. And what Quillions does automatically is it brings up keywords that you can modify, so add, edit, or delete based on the relevance. And as this is happening, mind you, behind the scenes, the machine learning algorithms for that context and content are learning what's relevant and getting enriched. And then the next step is actually creating the content generation. So just after, I'll forward it here and play it for you. So there is some lag with this video. Sorry about that, but this will provide you links along with the recording post the webinar. But what you're seeing here, oh, there we go, it started. What you're seeing here is Quillions has automatically generated 54 questions, and you're able to actually keep some of them, delete some of them, or even edit, like in this case, what you're seeing on the screen. So just a great way to automate and the question generation while not losing control over which questions are relevant and important. So I thought this was a good example in the context of learning to share with you. And thank you, Poonam, for pointing that out. If the earlier videos also the audio wasn't audible, I apologize, I did not realize. We'll send you links for all those videos, but hopefully you got a gist of the debater video that I was showing earlier and this one. So moving on, our next, the next trend we'll talk about is rich learning analytics. So analytics is essentially, as we saw, a branch of AI. and has merged, but it has emerged as a trend in and of itself. And I think it's partly our quest to constantly tap into data, organize it, analyze it, and try to make sense of it so that we can gather some insights. So again, in learning, the adoption of XAPI is basically allowing organizations to capture way more granular data about the learning activities than was possible before. So pretty much every learner activity could be tracked if desired. And if the data is available, it can be sliced and diced and presented in so many different ways to surface key insights. So which is, so this statistic here, like a 3 times growth in analytics, learning analytics, is not surprising when you put everything in context. Is now there's not just technology, but also there's technology and the computing power to do that. So let me honestly, so as you can see here, there are different levels in analytics. So one, it goes from measurement, evaluation, which is just aggregation of information, finding out why, how, those kind of things, to advanced. So where it really gets interesting is you get into advanced evaluation or predictive analytics. So with the availability of XAPI, we are actually able to tie learning to performance measurement. So XAPI actually allows you to tie into different external systems as well, so that you can gather the data and store it in the LRS. And so now L&D folks are able to actually tie learning outcomes to performance measurement. Where it can get even more interesting is predictive analytics. And this is where machine learning comes into play, where you can predict things predict some patterns before they happen. So for instance, where is the learner likely to need more help based on their current performance, their profile, and historic patterns of that course that you have based on the data. Or for instance, which topics are likely to be in demand based on the learner profiles or the changing learner profiles for that course, those kind of things. And this is really where we start to see the value of analytics and learning analytics. And let me pause here for a second. I think I just want to make sure there's no audio issues. There was a message in the chat. We will definitely get to your questions and comments later on in the session. I just wanted to pause, make sure the audio was clear. So here, coming back, this is a great example I found. It is from University of British Columbia. It's a system called CLASS, and it basically allows learners to tag, comment on, review video learning content, video-based learning content. And the exercise was to measure the impact of student engagement with the course material, with their course material, and how it impacts their grades or other indicators of learning. And what you're seeing at the bottom right is actually some serious number crunching and statistical modeling. This is one of the key aspects of analytics. So besides just the computational technology, analytics relies heavily on sophisticated statistical modeling, statistical models to derive some of the insights and recommendations. So I thought that was a good example to share. And now, oh, there we go. Now moving on to our trend number 3, which is microlearning. And microlearning, or bite-sized learning, whatever you prefer to call it, is definitely a growing trend. So be it videos or courses, the trend for everything short, concise, and at the point of need is becoming all pervasive, I think. And I think a primary driver for that is the makeup of our learners today. We are catering more and more to millennials and Gen Z learners, be it in the workplace or in the classrooms education. And they clearly do not have the time nor the patience to sit through long courses. Another interesting segment of the workforce is gig economy, which is growing. And in a gig economy, as you can imagine, there is very high turnover, and moreover, employees have to get trained really, really quickly, sometimes even on the job. So again, there is no time for long training sessions. So all this means the way we deliver the training has to change, and we need to deliver the training basically in short bursts when they need it and where they need it. So that's the key. And typically a micro-learning module can be anywhere between a couple minutes to 10 minutes maximum. And content can be pretty much in any format, videos, infographics, short content bites, even assessments, quizzes. But there's a couple of key things. One is the information access. I mean, the micro-learning module should be accessible from anywhere, meaning any devices, all kinds of devices. And secondly, it should be something that can be pushed to the learners by way of, say, reinforcements or content refreshers from time to time, or learners should be able to seek that information when needed. So say on-the-job training videos and so on. So I think fairly intuitive, and I'm sure many of you have been implementing this too, but I think it's a trend that's here to stay. So here's a quick example of a micro-learning module. It's on the topic of gamification, and it was actually developed using Interactivity. So as you can see, there's a few, within gamification, it talks about game mechanics, human motivations, how to identify map the motivations with the game mechanics, and so on. So I'll quickly launch this in the browser, and I hope you are able to see it. So this is a mini course, or a micro-learning course, if you will. So there's content that I can navigate through. And it's very modular in the sense it's talking about that one topic and one topic only. There's elements of gamification here, feedback, all the elements of learning, interactive learning, engaging learning. And obviously at the end, there's, it talks about further about the topic and assessment and a summary. So a very self-contained modular unit of micro-learning. I just thought I'll share that as an example. Obviously, you've seen many others in form of videos or other micro-learning courses, even infographics. So moving on, our next trend is video-based learning. And honestly, this is not really a new trend. Videos as a medium of learning, as you all know, is not new. However, I feel it is all about how the video-based learning has evolved. So there was a time, and I'm sure you'd remember, some of you might remember, where you were told to use videos cautiously in e-learning, especially for various reasons, like lack of bandwidth, devices not having the capacity, development cost being prohibitive, and so on. But with the advances in the last few years in technology and devices, I think these blockers are non-existent, which is why we're now seeing a lot of applications of videos in learning. It's like I'd like to say, it's as if the horizon of video-based learning has expanded. So simple traditional training videos and animated videos are of course here to stay, but in addition, I feel that technology is enabling L&D teams to incorporate things like 360-degree immersive videos or interactive videos, live sales training videos, and so on. And so on the market, there are now many platforms and tools which will enable you to do one or many of these things. So I'll just name a few. I'm sure you have dealt with or come across many more. But for example, Beyond, which was formerly Go Animate, allows you to create some cool animated training videos. Exaltive is another platform which allows you to make your existing videos interactive by adding a layer of annotations and interactivity on top of your videos. Rehearsal is another platform for sales training that relies greatly on live video recordings as a means to train. And of course, there's Adobe Animate. And lastly, Mondo mentioned Panapto. It's a full video content management platform with features like lecture recording and video streaming. So as I said, this is not new, but it has really gained even more traction, video-based learning, and it's definitely here to stay and grow. And here's a couple of examples of some interesting videos. There's a ton of them, which you've come across too, I'm sure. But I found these two, and I know there's audio issues with playing these videos, so I will just not play the audio and talk instead. So this is a 360 immersive video, which gives information about the solar system and the galaxy universe. And actually, this is really cool when you see it when you experience it using Google Cardboard. So I'll forward it just a little bit. So as you can see along the way, so it takes you through a journey into space, and as you go along, find different planets. It gives you information on those planets and so on. So it's a really cool video. So I thought I'd bring it in here. And my second example below is another video, but this time it's an animated video. And why I thought this was amazing is because it talks about how air flows in HVAC systems in buildings, commercial buildings, and so on. So honestly, such a dry subject, but Johnson Controls has actually used animated videos to make that very engaging. And along the way, it talks about the whole entire process, the different steps in the HVAC when the air flows in and out, what happens, things like that. So I think it's talking about the livers here and how the air goes in, but the dirt is kept out, etc. And some more information as you progress through the video. It shares more information about the different parts of the HVAC system as well. So, and I'll just let it play a little bit more. It's talking about air control and setting the air control and how fresh air comes in through the HVAC into the buildings and rooms where people are working. So again, a great way, just further, I mean, just a fantastic way, I think, to show something so dry and boring in an engaging, interactive way using sort of a micro-learning video module. With that, let's go on to our next trend, and that is augmented reality and virtual reality. And honestly, I think this trend has arrived this year, and it is set to transform our learning stage in 2019 and beyond. So augmented AR and VR have always been acknowledged as effective ways, but it used to be cost prohibitive and technology wasn't quite there yet. But now with the technology and the cost going down, it's more affordable, which is why we are seeing some of the statistics that we're seeing here. And it's being increasingly used to supplement formal training. So, and just to distinguish very quickly between VR and AR, VR basically immerses the user in a completely virtual environment, whereas AR, augmented reality, enhances your real world objects by digitally overlaying with, by digitally produced overlays that are superimposed. So it could be anything that's graphics, videos, sound, what have you, and those elements are superimposed on top of a real world element. So for instance, a product brochure, you could point at the different parts of the product and it'll pop up more information on that product. Another big difference is VR requires additional physical devices like, the popular Oculus Rift or Google Glass, Cardboard, those kind of devices to view it. But AR, you pretty much can turn your everyday devices like tablets and phones to overlay digital interfaces into being overlay digital interfaces. So, again, VR is being used in all sorts of e-learning, from onboarding and product training to compliance training and even high risk or hazardous situation type of trainings. In fact, that's where it has a lot of value. Speaking of high risk, training, one example, and I think some of you might have heard, there's an initiative from Toyota. It's called Teen Drive 365, which teaches teens to drive in a safe VR simulated environment before they actually hit the roads. I thought that was such a fantastic idea and initiative. So again, from this you can see there's obvious advantages to VR training. First of all, it's an immersive experience, so you get the real feel, almost the real feel of being in that environment. It is significantly low risk, both to the environment and to the people involved. It's also low cost compared to simulating some of the real life experiences. For instance, if it was a firefighter's drill, for instance, right? It's sort of expensive and time consuming to recreate that scenario and the smoke and the fire. So, and of course it's also used to, it's easy to simulate scenarios which are otherwise difficult to recreate. And last but not least, consistent training experience. I think this is important because no matter who the learner, where the learner is, across the world maybe, they all, through virtual VR training, you can deliver the same consistent, real, near to real life experience to everyone across the board. And speaking of consistent, training experience, here's an example I came across, which was very interesting. Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC, has implemented VR training in their food handling. So basically, 19,000 plus cooks across US take this 10-minute long VR training or exercise, which is almost like a gamified experience, where they get to experience the everything from full chicken prep to the cooking process, and along the way, the do's and don'ts of food handling and safety regulations and so on. So imagine 19,000 cooks across US, everyone getting the same exact consistent experience across the board. I think that's fantastic. And of course, this does require devices, the Oculus Rift device, but I think the benefits are huge. So just thought I would share that. I'm sure you may have read about or seen some other examples as well. So with that, let's move on to our next trend, which is learning experiences. So basically, it's all about going from learning management to learning experiences. I think some of you may be seeing this already in your workplace. It's definitely a paradigm shift. The new age learning platforms are more about the learner than they are about the administrators, bottom line. And, sort of trying to be the Spotify of learning, if you will. And I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Josh Bersin who first called these platforms LXPs, or learning experience platforms. And again, this is not to say that administration is not an important aspect, but focusing on the learner's needs and their outcomes is of equal, if not greater relevance, is what I think the new age thinking is. Traditionally, LMSs were top-down systems controlled by administrators, and learners had very little freedom to chart their individualized learning pathways. But with LXP, now the learner has the flexibility. And this diagram essentially just shows some of the key elements, components of LXP. And mind you, some of the newer platforms may have some, maybe not all of these components, but essentially this is some of the key components. So one is personalized user experiences, whether it be the user interface, dashboard, or actually personalized content that is curated for the learner. The second is obviously recommendations based on user activities or goals or preferences, that kind of a thing, and we talked about it earlier. Third is analytics. We saw that with the XAPI now it's possible to present sophisticated analytics about the learner and the learning content to the administrator as well as the learner. And next up is creating the custom learning paths, where learner has the ability to chart their own learning paths based on interest and profile and those kind of things. Obviously, the learning content and the mode of delivery, there can be many. It's micro-learning videos, games, podcasts, and so many more. The idea is being able to quickly deliver when you need it, what you need. And lastly, integration with other systems. So as we saw, it makes it possible to tie learning performance with the overall performance measurement. And not only that, you can integrate with, say, social peer networks that the organization from that organization that the learner is part of. So again, a lot more moving parts which are geared towards the learner and the learning outcomes. And I'm sure you may have quickly noticed aspects of some of the earlier trends that we talked about here today, and how they're all converging to create the best learning experience for the learner. Here's a quick dashboard, and again, it's about how much it's a dashboard from Degreed, which is one of the newer learning platforms, and has some of these elements of the LXP that we just talked about. So now over to our last trend, which is interactivity and learner engagement. Interactivity is not a new trend by any means, but I think it's a trend that continues to be in the forefront of e-learning. Being on top of all the trends that we talked about just now, but missing out on the crucial element of interactivity and engagement will really make the training ineffective. And I think we all know that it's, and of course we don't want our learner to be that person on the screen. So I think it's something that has been there, but it is just as critical, so to speak, even today. And in fact, some might argue that interactivity is more like an underlying theme for all types of learning rather than even a trend, because it's that important. So everything we talked about today, think of the things, interactive videos, virtual reality, chatbots, microlearning, LXP, everything revolves around one thing only, right? Making the learning interactive and thereby engaging. So I think it's a very important aspect of learning. And so what value does it bring? Of course, it improves the engagement and thus improving learning outcomes. And best of all, keeping the learner motivated. So I think we know that, and the content can be, the interactivity content has evolved in many different directions, as we saw. So interactivity, that was the last trend in our list of trends today. But before we end, so I'd love to open it up to participants for Q&A and open discussion, really, to see, get their ideas, thoughts. But before that, really want to quickly introduce you to Raptivity. For one, it's a Raptivity sponsored webinar, but jokes apart, speaking of interactivity, Raptivity is a leading tool for developing interactive content for your e-learning. So just a quick information about Raptivity. So what Raptivity is essentially a library of over 190 plus interaction templates, right from learning aids, assessments, brain teasers, all the way to games and simulations. And all you do is simply choose the type of interaction, customize your templates with your own content and look and feel, and publish it. That easy. And once your Raptivity interaction is ready, it's very portable. You can just drop it into your existing e-learning courses or even PowerPoint presentations, or you can integrate it with courses that were developed using other authoring tools. Alternatively, you can just directly put it on the LMS because it is SCORM compliant. So for example, the gamification micro-learning module we saw earlier, that could be just directly uploaded to your LMS and tracked. So, and that was developed using Raptivity, by the way. So that was a real brief introduction to Raptivity. If you are interested in learning more about it, you can visit our website at www.raptivity.com. And there you can even download a free trial. So with that said, we are officially at the end of our presentations. I would love to open it up to discussion or any questions. And I will now go to the chat to see if there's any comments. If you've seen anything while I do that, while I sort through that, I encourage you to keep your comments and insights coming. So give me a moment, but if you have any questions, comments, I would love to hear those. Great. So I'm just catching up. I think there were some audio issues with the video. Sorry about that again. Yes, so someone's asking, so Raptivity, can it be integrated with other tools like Captivate? And the answer is yes, it can. It produces output in HTML5 as well as Flash. Of course, Flash is soon going to be redundant, but yes, it can. Are there any other trends that anybody would like to share at this time that you've seen or implemented yourselves? Okay, there is a question in the question panel. Oh, there's some Lynn saying reference to VR, I'm using high fidelity. However, the scripting is limited in experience of user. Yes, and I think that's with some of these emerging trends, be it AI or VR type of things, the talent, the skills are limited, and the experience of other users sometimes can be compromised. But I think the technology and talent is both catching up very quickly. Thank you, Lynn. So one question is about Quillians. Is it only factual questions? The answer is factual, yes, but it can also be, over time learn to understand the context using the corpus and so on to create context-based questions as well. Some of the tools that I've mentioned along the way, Katrina's asking, those are just some that I have come across. And like I said, those are by way of examples. There's many out there, whether it's the video platforms or interactive videos or the micro-learning platforms, LXPs, there's out there. This was just more for knowledge sharing or information sharing, if you will. I'd love to hear what your experience has been or any tools you've come across as well. Thank you for that. One question is about Raptivity being XAPI compliant. Yes, some of the interactions are XAPI compliant. So, and then those can be integrated into your LRSs and so on. Oh, great. Thank you, Marissa. She's saying PlayPosit allows inserting interactivity into video. I had not heard of it, so thank you. That is new to me. Thank you for sharing that. Someone is asking, Jim is asking, how could you share a quick demo on how to integrate Raptivity with Blackboard? Certainly, I unfortunately do not have Blackboard here, but we do have, so we can take this offline and we'll be sure to get back to you with instructions, and our support team can even walk you through those on how to integrate, not just with Blackboard, but also other authoring tools or other tools like PowerPoint. So we'll make sure. So what's going to happen along with the recording of this session, we will also collate all the questions as well as information shared in this open session and share that with you, and in that we'll answer the questions as well. So if I have inadvertently missed any question or comment, you will see those in that document as well. And yes, our Raptivity team, that's watching the chat has put the link to the tutorials in the chat. So you'll find some integration tips as well. So there's a question about single license dual activation. I'm guessing that's for Raptivity. What that basically means is you are allowed to install Raptivity on two computers, meaning your, say, laptop and a work desktop. You're able to do that and, switch between the two. So the licensing of Raptivity Suite is single license dual activation. I think we will just wait for another minute for any comments, questions before we close. But anything we didn't get to, we will get to it in our follow-up. And Isha, Poonam, if there were any questions, comments that I missed, please send it to me over chat. Thank you, appreciate the comments. Great, so we'll leave the question box open for a little bit, and so if you still have any last minute questions, we can take those. Perfect, someone's saying no more questions, that's great. Great, so I think with that, we will now conclude the presentation. For any of you who joined late, I wanted to mention once again that the session is recorded and the recording will be shared soon after the webinar. And really appreciate everyone's participation, enthusiastic participation, I should say. And on behalf of the entire Raptivity team, I want to thank you all for your time today and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.